Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you both are doing well.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am back with Michelle Linden and Emily Palmer of Wild Mother Collective.
Mhm.
Wild Mother Collective is an online and in-person village in Portland, Oregon to support mothers through all stages of parenting from birth to empty nest and beyond. We have a more extended biography for them on their website and at our first interview. So we're back today because we started this interview series 2 videos ago, beginning with a look at the soul qualities of a child from birth to 1.5 years. And then the second video was continuing from 1.5 years to 3 years. And so today we will be talking about the soul quality of childhood for the period spanning 3 to 6 years.
Mhm.
I'd like to start with a quote from Rudolf Steiner. There is only one educator, and that is the child man and the child woman facing their own selves. Education is the art of creating an opportunity for child beings to educate themselves.
Mm.
And the reason why I'm starting with this quote is because I feel like as parents, before our child is even born, we're already stressed about their educational journey and what's the best approach. And so this is why we're actually even doing these interviews, because if we don't understand the development of a child from a soul perspective and where they're coming from in their own individual bodies and souls, then it'll be hard for us to make the best decision for our child, whether that's mainstream school, private school, or just independent learning. So there's just so many ways to engage our children in their unfolding of their own soul. So um,
Mhm.
I'm going to let Michelle and Emily talk about the soul qualities of 3 to 6 year olds.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that quote because this morning, as I was preparing and kind of just tuning in to all that we've shared from birth to here we are now, we're at this cusp at the end point of the garden of childhood, early childhood. And I was thinking, oh, well, it would be good to just kind of, if we can just, step back to that wider lens of all of it. What is this garden of childhood? What is early childhood? Because at 6 to 7, they're moving out of it into something completely different. And if we look with that wider lens and just try to put ourselves in those little bodies of our children, like see through their eyes, experience the world through their senses. Um, we're in this realm where it's pure goodness. Everything is well, everything is one, everything's interconnected, and everything is pure magic and discovery. And it's so easy for us to forget about that because as adults, we've been trained and learned and practiced in doing and production and getting something done. And we have very different ways of viewing the world. And it can be a really great opportunity as parents when we just take that time to sit in that realm of early childhood. It does our own beings well too, of just like slowing down, just taking time to be and time to enjoy. Um, and so I just wanted to start there, like that's really what's happening through all of these ages and stages in these first years up until 6, 7, where they are exploring a new world full of possibility. They're exploring through their senses. Everything is delightful and new and wonderful until we introduce our own resistance and feelings and beliefs to them. They really just feel that the world is so good and anything is possible. And that, it's so funny because like right now, this 3 to 6 is often where we start to educate children, where we're deciding, do I send them to preschool? Do I send them to kindergarten? Like, what's the best course for them? And really, there's absolutely nothing to educate for this age. They come in with this already, they come in with this deep knowing and presence, and they have their own mission, their own desires that they are discovering, and it's just a natural unfolding. And we as parents can really just create a safe container for that, to allow them to uncover and be who they are. And Western, like more modern culture and education systems, it's really interesting because as we move towards becoming a more mechanistic society, we all of a sudden had purpose, drive, things had to be produced. And our way of thinking of humanity was it shifted, it changed. So now, education became this thing of like, children are empty vessels that have to be filled with our knowing in our ways of viewing the world, or they'll just be ignorant, which is also a very colonial approach and patriarchal approach to humanity of like,
Right.
I know, and now I have to impress my knowledge and values on you. And, before that turn, more people really just lived in this interconnected beingness. And children, that's how they drop into this world. They're very connected to that greater, you can call it spiritual realm, the non-physical, whatever words and terms you have for that. That's what they're coming from, and they're still deeply connected to, and until life causes them to have different resistance and beliefs, which is usually introduced by society. So just holding that of just like, they've got all the wisdom and knowledge they need, and we can just let them explore in that really secure sense of being held by the goodness of existence, by the joy of existence, by the pleasure of existence. Mhm.
I think if we just take one thing from this entire interview or series, it's if we can learn to just let them be.
Let them be, let them play. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Wow. That feels so complete. Like, and we're done. That's really all there is that
It's
we
like a
need to
warm
know.
blanket.
It really is. I feel so cozy. Yeah. It
Oh,
it
Mm.
makes me think all of the things that you just said, and how and what you said, Belinda, is like, we as parents can just create this warm blanket environment for
mhm.
them to unfold in. Like, that's our work as parents. Their work is the being, their work is the joy and the unfolding, and the best thing that we can do is just create that warm cocoon for them to do that exploration and that being in delight.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, when you were describing the essence, I felt like what a blessing as a parent to hear what you're saying, because it feels good to hit that pause button and just also delight in the wonder and the interconnectedness of um, parent and child.
Mhm.
and how much we learn about our children
And
and
ourselves.
ourselves. But also, to your point, Belinda, of what you were saying earlier, of like, this is where we begin, before they're even born, we wonder what type of education, what are they going to need, how are we going to move them through life. But unless we stop and pause and watch and see who they are becoming throughout early childhood, then, as Emily was saying, all we're going to do is impress our our needs and ideals on
Fears.
and fears on them.
Yeah.
But if we can watch and see, like, who is this person? Who is this person I've brought into the world that has come to join me? And always be asking that question through this new, every day is a new lens of, who are you becoming?
Yeah. And there's, if we do that, if we're really tuning into our children and taking the time to observe them without our own story, without our own judgment, they're showing us what they need.
And
They
what
will,
the world needs.
yeah, but it's like it'll just become evident. You'll see what they're wanting more of and what they're capable of. Um, yeah, yeah. So yes, all of that. But also this age of 3 to 6 is, for me, it's such a magical age. It's like it's my heaven. It's where I've spent 22 years, and and it's so there's so much depth in these ages. Like there's so many topics. I work with teachers on these topics, and like, so all of it can be its own workshop. There's so many different components, but Michelle and I were really thinking and tuning in of like, well, what are the like key pieces that are happening at 3 to 6? And so we came up with a few, but yeah, there's so much. But like one of the things that we kind of touch a little bit on in our last episode, but imagination and fantasy. And this is where, and again, like when you let them be connected to this world of oneness and goodness, like this just naturally evolves, and it really takes off in these years, 3 to 6. You'll see it especially around 4, where fantasy play and imagination is the golden rule. Like this is how they are interacting with the world. They are creating their own magical realms. They're using their toys to create these elaborate scenes. They're playing out stories that they've created. They're playing out stories that they've heard. And yeah, everything that they perceive is so much greater than just the physical expression. Like they connect to, like, trees can talk, seeds can talk, stones can talk. Like, and there is absolute truth in that for them. It's not silliness. It's like, for them, all of these things are communicating to them. It makes absolute sense that all of these things have personality, that they all have their own being. And so, yeah, so this is the realm they love to play in. And as parents, this is a realm that we can really connect in, and used to our advantage. It makes life easier. The way to connect to a child, especially to have them move and do the things that we are needing them or wanting them to do, we can come in with this imagination and playfulness about it, and they're right there with us. Yeah. If we come in with that, like, just do it this, I'm just gonna, hey, this is what has to be done, then we hit this wall and it's startling to them. But if we just kind of meet them in their play and be like, oh, wouldn't this be fun? Just create a story about what we're going to do, then it makes absolute sense for them to just continue doing that. Now they're interested.
Yeah. Like a simple example is if your child is
Yeah.
playing kitty cat, right? Then and you need them to come to the table for snack, you can be like, "Come on, kitty, let's make our way to go have some milk at the table." And like give them a little cup of milk or have a little snack. So you can just enter their imagination and meet them at that point of whatever they're playing in, and then you can bring them along with such ease because you're not interrupting that process in their mind. It just makes sense for them to come along because they are the kitty. Like they are the kitty.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The other piece with that is, yeah, we can use it. So that's a great example, Michelle. I've used it in the classroom too. Like after we have snack and there's all the crumbs under the table, like then I tell the children, oh, all the mousies have to go pick up their crumbs. And like we have a little basket that they put their crumbs in, you know. But the reason this is also happening is because developmentally where they are in that thinking perceiving realm is they are thinking and perceiving through images and pictures and archetypes. So it is not yet that rational thinking that has come online. They are in this connected oneness, and everything is, it's they're working on this inner picturing. And this is essential, absolutely essential to all the academic learning that they will move into later in life. They're working on this inner picturing. And this is essential, absolutely essential to all the academic learning that they will move into later in life. It is absolutely essential to creative thinking. So it can't be undermined what's happening. Like we can just think it's silly, goofy play, and when will they grow up? But this is an essential part of their development. And if they miss this, then they have trouble later on in life. Sometimes they have trouble reading, sometimes they have trouble conceptualizing beyond anything that is very like black and white. Yeah. And so and what I really love about this is like this is the foundational piece to freedom, to thinking outside of what is just presented to them, to take what is presented to them and now expand into something completely new. This is the mother of invention. Yeah. I get so excited about it.
It's so exciting because it's so powerful and it's such we just want as adults in this modern world to just skip to logic right away. And that we think that as soon as we engage their intellect that we're benefiting them. And that's what we're seeing in all of the schools. And we're seeing so much suffering in learning. Children are having such a hard time learning because we're now having them sit and engage the intellect at such an early age. We just keep pushing that back forward, or keep pushing that back earlier, thinking that that is the answer when actually it's the exact opposite is the answer.
Right. And that's why these interviews are important, because as parents, we are our children's advocates. So we have to understand that we have the ability to say, no, that's not where I'm going, and to step into looking specifically for preschools like yours, Fernwood School, and outdoor schools, people who are allowing your child to live in creativity and bringing wonder to them. And like my friend has her child at a little farm school, and they have chickens, and that's wonderful, to see a chick grow into chicken and all of that. So it's having that, because even as a parent, it's when you're talking about the example that you shared, Michelle, it's in my mind, I can recall, when Dylan was younger, and it's like, it's so much easier just to speak in that logical term rather than to go back and think in an imaginative way to move her through, her ages and her day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like that. It's almost as a parent, you want to have that willingness to slow down and move back into play and your own imagination. It's like, wow, if you're pregnant right now, intending to have a child, start pulling out all your fairy tale books and like Blondie and Garfield and anything that's going to just kind of like be funny for you, because that's where you need to be, rather than reading the book like what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect in the first 2 years or first year. What's going to be more useful is to step back into your own creativity and writing and reading and painting and whatever it is. Go play games. Right? Watch comedies. I don't know. But even I was just with one of our, pod teachers, and we're talking about getting together with like all the age kids. And she says, well, even the parents, they need to participate. They need to bring the joy. The parents right now are just always so serious. We're so bogged down with stress.
Yeah.
That it's like when you have a child, this is your opportunity.
Yeah.
To shed off all that. Yeah. We don't need to be stressed about our children. They are the new, they're bringing in the new energy and what they need. And all we need to is just like what you say, have a container, just give them space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which leads us actually to the next point of that children this age in early childhood learn through modeling and imitation. And so if we as parents are in this place of seriousness and and stress and always in this logical mind without play and joy and other forms of expression and being, this is the imprint. This is the realm that the child learns to imitate. And of course there's, again, I always like to go back to the reality of like, we live in a stressful world and things are stressful right now. And the reality is that we're working with that. So it's not that we always have to be like a happy parent, but that we're modeling ways to move through some of those stresses, that we're modeling ways of resiliency, that we're modeling ways of acknowledging, ooh, today was a really hard, maybe today was really hard. And here we can go play. So that again, we're bringing that, we're bringing different ways of being to them, but it begins, the point is that it begins with us, right? It begins with us and what we want them to learn, how we would like, what we hope for our children. It's like it begins with where we are. So
yeah. And that imitation and modeling isn't just an external thing. We tend to keep everything at an external level. So it's like, oh, they're just imitating what they see us do, but they actually also imitate how we feel.
Yeah.
And you will see it in their play. And if we're feeling frustrated, it's fun to watch children in their play, because they will play it out in with their dolls, with their friends. That's just like they're going to play out the inner mood of what's happening. And so, yeah, we as parents, we as educators, we can really look at, okay, what am I modeling and what do I really want them to imitate? But this is the real education piece. And there is a quote by Steiner too, that really says like the only education is self-education. And, and so this is the piece of being a parent in these ages is like, oh, we're not educating them, we're educating ourselves right now. And they will just come along and unfold and discover. But how we show up for them, that's the important piece. That's the piece that builds secure attachment, trust in the world, trust in us as their parents. It gives them the safety and security to go out into the world and explore and show who they are to the world. So get emotional when I think
This is like the third or fourth time you've just been
I
on
know.
the
I was very depressed. Hormones are lovely. It happens all the time when I talk about children.
Right. It is emotional to talk about children and how we want to support them in
Yeah,
perceiving the world.
and perceiving the world, but also to not add extra stress to ourselves as the adult and the parent, because we're showing them a process of becoming, not a perfection.
Mhm.
And I think we really have to step back into that and take off that pressure of ourselves. And this is where like children can be those lovely lights for us of like showing us how to be in the world too. Like, oh, to just relax. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just
Not
have
a big
fun for a moment. Like just listen to the birds. Feel
Yeah.
that wind on your skin. Like just breathe for a moment. Yeah, they can
Mhm.
be that reflection for us of like, oh yeah, that's right. Just be here right now. I don't have to worry about where they're going to college at this moment or,
Or ever.
or ever. That will be decided and figured out along the pathway.
By your child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that really exists is this moment right now.
Yeah.
And children are there and they can really help us
Yeah.
tune into that.
Yeah. And we don't have to figure out how we're going to make them what one thing that Emily and I often come across with parents is parents worrying about how they're going, how they're going to behave in society.
Yeah.
Right, like my child won't pick up their toys and I just think that now they're gonna be stealing vehicles by the time they're teenagers. If I can't get them to listen to me
Now, how will they ever?
how will they
Yeah.
ever follow the rules? And this is such, again, kind of tying back into that learning by modeling is at this age we're really doing things with them side by side. It's not about them listening and following the rules, but it's about us guiding them and showing them they're not being defiant. They just are either so in depth in their story and imagination and play that they can't hear you, or they don't have the ability to take direction because that part of their brain isn't fully online yet. And so we can be side by side with them and show them if we want them to put their toys away. We can take their hand and hold their hand, or maybe we even just put the toys away and we have a song that always goes with it. And then that eventually becomes a part of just what happens as opposed to a direction that they have to cognitively understand. And it just becomes a part again of the rhythm which we talked about in the other two things. It just becomes part of the rhythm and it becomes part of the knowing, but they learn through watching us do it, not by us shouting the direction from across the room, go clean up your toys.
Right. And if if we even just cleaned it up and they saw us doing it, by the time that they're old enough to understand communication, and you've done this and you say, hey, can you go pick up your toys real quick while I do this?
Yeah.
They understand what that means.
Yeah.
They'll do it. Or they might
Yeah.
not, because they're at that 6-year-old stage where they want to be
Yeah.
defiant. And that's
Well,
okay too.
right. And really that type of direction isn't even something in early childhood a child could do. That concept, like for us, that felt so simple to say, go pick up your toys in your
Yeah.
room. And while I go do this thing, that was way too big for a young child to take on. What the hell did that mean? So you have to be
That's good to
real.
know.
Yeah, you actually have to be really specific. And the younger the child, so like starting at 3, like one simple command, not that's too big. It would be pick up this block and put it in the basket. You have to be so precise and small, because they are dreamy and they will get lost on the way. And anything like again, that we have this greater context of what it means to clean up a room. They don't. You have to be so like this block in front of you. So at a 3-year-old, I just hand them the things and I say, oh, put that on the shelf, and they know what shelf it is supposed to go on, or, put that in this basket. So it's a retraining for us as adults to be like, oh, I'm giving them things that I can contextually and conceptually perceive, but it's beyond their ability right now. At 6-year-old, like 5 to 6-year-olds, like you're lucky to have them be able to do a step that has 2 to 3 different directions in it. That's the end goal. So when you're at 3, it's like one thing that I'm probably going to help you along with. And then as they get older towards 5 and 6, like you can say, pick up all the blocks on the floor and put them in the basket and then go wash your hands.
Okay. 2 tasks in one
2
sentence.
tasks in one sentence.
Only around like 4 or 5.
5 to
If
6.
then,
5
5 to 6. Yeah.
See, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Right? Because our kids by like 3 or 4, a lot of times they're already speaking, running, doing things.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, because we're so brain heavy,
yeah,
right? We're like, just do it. And we don't understand why they can't do it. And here you're saying, well, if we really understand child development, they can't process that.
That's too much to process. It becomes overwhelming. And then they might do the last thing they heard and not the first thing they heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens? Then we yell at our child because they're not doing the thing. And what does that do? Right.
Trauma. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's trauma, but there's a feeling of like, I can't do it. Right. I can't there. And
what am I
what's
doing
wrong with me?
Right.
Yeah. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Because I can't do it, because in their mind, they're so proud that they did the one thing.
Yeah.
And all we see most of the time as parents, because we're giving them a command that's far beyond their expectation, and the way that our brains work as adults is we see the thing that they didn't do.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, which is this brings up a dynamic Michelle and I were talking about yesterday of just, it's so easy as adults and parents, like in this range of 3 to 6, they're verbalizing, they're engaging, they're it's so easy to think of them as little adults.
Yeah.
Because now they're interacting with us in a way that they weren't able to before, and they're communicating ideas and thoughts. So, they're cute little things. So it's so easy to put expectations on them that they're not ready to meet yet. And it's unfair. And, we just think of, oh, they're just like smaller versions of us now.
Yeah.
But they're actually really, really little young beings that are just starting to to figure out the world. And they're little and they need protection and they still need slowness and they still need to play and get lost in their thoughts, and they're still going to be distracted. And why on earth would they clean a room? What's the importance of that?
Right.
You know,
It's not
why?
important.
Yeah.
No,
These
no,
are my toys. Of course I want them around me.
yeah,
Why would I want to put them away?
yeah,
I love them.
I love them.
I
I
mean,
set them up just like this.
Yeah.
the way you describe these little beings makes me want to like pull up a little pillow and like sit like this at your knee and just listen to you talk about it all day. It's your description is just so good. They're like little yummy beings.
They're so yummy. And to remember that they're so yummy and little, even no matter how well they talk and communicate and express their feelings and opinions on things, they are little,
They are
little.
and this is such a time where, especially like 3, because of that will force, right, that they can seem really big because they can have some really big emotions as they bump up against things, against the world, and us as adults, in addition to all of the things that Emily mentioned about them being verbal and having ideas now, but their emotions can also
Yeah.
make them seem taller than we are. Just this massive force. And
Yeah.
to remember to like widen that lens and look at them and just remember how small they actually are.
Mhm.
It's one of the things that in our sessions that we'll talk to parents about. We'll say they've only been here for 24 months on the planet, or 36 months on the planet. Like and the first 12 of it, they weren't doing anything. Like so they've really only been here like 24 months walking and figuring it out, of like cognitive in that, or thinking in that way, or being in that way. And parents are always like, oh,
Oh,
sure.
right? You're putting it in context. And by the way, they're still developing.
Yeah.
They're not even fully developed yet.
No,
Not even close.
not
Our
even
brain
close.
doesn't get fully developed until like 25.
25.
Yeah.
And what we're asking of a 3 or a 4-year-old when they're 20 years away from having that ability to understand cause and effect or consequences. Nowhere near, nowhere, not even close, not even close.
Yeah.
Tiny, tiny.
Tiny. Wow. When you
Like,
put it
think
in
of
that
them
kind
as
of,
like a tiny
comparison.
baby bunny. That's what they are, with teeth.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, can we talk about,
Mhm.
parents that might have the desire, they have this child that's talking now, and the child has a lot of questions and they're so inquisitive. And sometimes there are parents that really want to share their knowledge and they
Mhm.
really start like diving in deep. What?
Yeah.
Look at what's the sky do? What's the sun doing right now? How come it's raining? Well, evaporation, la la blah blah blah.
Mhm.
What do we say about that?
Yeah.
So again, this ties into them living in imagination and images. Imagination means imagery. Um, they are developing their own inner pictures. They work in this, yeah, really think in pictures and images. Kind of almost, like very primitive storytelling. And So to describe in detail a scientific process of what they're beholding just is a wash. It doesn't really make any sense to them. Um, and because we want them to develop this skill of inner picturing, which leads to inner thinking, um, the less we say about things at this age, the better. Um, it serves them more to just, they say, why is the sun shining? There's so many ways. Like my favorite thing to say, and my teenager still laughs about it. My favorite thing was, I wonder. Let them play that out. Why is the sun shining? They can come to their own conclusions about that. It's not like they will never know what
Yeah.
that is. If I don't give them the scientific explanation right now, um, just let them play with that. Questions at this age are often just a process of engagement rather than gathering knowledge anyway. They just want to engage with us. So yeah, why is the sun shining? Because it felt like it. Oh, because the plants asked it to. You're giving this like really simple picture of it as a process. And as they age into this other skill of cognition and thinking and processing, they will pull that out and their teachers will be teaching them. But now is not the time for that, because right now they still need to live in this magical reverence and goodness, and to take something that feels like pure magic, like the sun just gets up. It just gets up. And, it's pure like deliciousness in their body. And then to just like put all the ick of like, well, actually, what's happening here is the world is spinning. And so sometimes we're faced away from the sun, and and it happens this many days that you're just like to like really.
It's like wah wah.
Yeah.
Like,
Even when you're explaining that in my heart, I'm like, boring,
yeah, exactly.
right?
And then it's just like, well,
Boring.
now I'm not interested. That's not fun
Right.
anymore.
Right.
So just let them live in the magic, and you don't have to explain all of those details right now. They will come, and there will be a moment in time where it like they're ready for it and they start seeing those connections themselves. But right now, answers can be so simple and light because it's really about them exploring and feeling into the world and coming up with their own inner knowledge and wisdom. And it's it's amazing what they will come up with when we let them have that realm to explore, and they're not far off. It's just a simpler understanding. And that's the reality of these ages, is like everything has to be simpler. Everything has to be simpler, and that's okay, because they'll be continually adding to their awareness and wisdom and understanding as they age. We don't want them to have the understanding of a professor when they're 3. They're not capable of holding that. Yeah. So just, again, just allowing them that breath to live into it, us to not talk so much at them and explain so much to them. Um, it it actually just allows them this ease in being. And there's something delicious. We have to remember that, of like there's something delicious of knowing that there's more in life to explore and find out.
Mhm.
So giving them all the answers right now, it's like having all the candy at once. Right? Like
Mhm.
let them have the things to keep yearning for. and exploring, like, because that's what happens at this age, is like we're helping them develop that desire to learn. And we are programmed as humans to grow and learn. There's no way that's not going to happen.
We're learning beings.
We are. And so we can let go of some of that stress of like, I have to teach them everything right now. They'll never figure it out if I don't. That's not true. They're going to figure out what they need to know when they're ready to know it.
And to one of the things that happens through that is that they develop a love of the world.
Yeah.
And the love of the world creates the curiosity that's going to make them want to learn when that time is appropriate for them to learn intellectually. Because now they've had the wonder and the delight of feeling this fabulous, just yummy juiciness of the sun. And so, for an example, right? And then it's like, oh, and that creates a curiosity potentially in that child, so that when they actually do start to learn about the sun, there's an inner love of the sun. And now I want to learn about the sun.
Yeah.
And it's like that with all of the things. Yeah.
I feel like what I'm hearing is very freeing for a parent, if they're willing to live into what you guys are saying, because it's so stressful to try and figure out, to have that perception that I have to teach my child X, Y, and Z, right? But when you're saying like the child comes into the world and they have wonder, when you allow them to have their curiosity and you provide that space, a warm home, and to get out in nature, there's so much wonder in nature. It's helpful for us, and as a parent, it's so much more joyful and expansive to watch your child blooming rather than coming at them with, how am I going to teach them, because that's so stressful.
Yeah. And there's also another piece of this that is important, is letting them have the presence and curiosity. Because just like when we spoke in before, like we tend to jump in with the solution or to aid our children, thinking it's going to help them. But even in this, like them having this love and curiosity, we don't need to then push them forward to the next thing. So I think often, like children will find worms in the garden, and they're just beholding them, and they're telling me all the things these worms are doing. And and I'm not like, it's so ingrained as adults to then come in and say like, well, those worms are breaking down the soil and blah blah blah, like all the bigger picture of like, now this is my moment to educate you. But they are being educated by the worm itself. They're holding it, they're feeling it, they're watching it. They're using their skill of observation and to come to conclusions, natural conclusions. So that is where they need to be in their education of self in the world.
That teaches them to be the scientists that you so want them to be.
Exactly. Yeah. That's an important piece for them, is and that's curiosity. We want them to be curious, but if we just immediately force feed them the answers all the time, then, sometimes it stops them from asking the questions. Or they don't have to put in that inner work anymore, because they can, we see it now in our adult worlds, we can just Google it. We don't have to really think too far. We'll just consult our phones and it will tell us the answer. And there's use for that as adults. And then there are times when it keeps us from really living into those realms. So yeah, I just think for children, like, yeah, less is more. Less is more in all things
Less is more actually for everyone.
for everyone.
And yeah, it kind of makes me feel like you kind of, when you start so young and you're going to try and educate them and sort of set yourself, look for opportunities for education and set yourself up as the educator, the one who knows, right? You're sort of setting your child up for always looking for external affirmations and like knowledge, as opposed to connecting them with their own intuition and their own knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is that by allowing them to be the observer and question, and us not jump in to that, what we're really teaching them is how to become their own authority.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
Especially now, given what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of children that really just kind of are ping-ponging, adults too, ping-ponging, because they don't have authority over themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And authority by meaning like what do I need? What feels good to me? What what do I want to do today that feels fulfilling? What are my choices? What works for me as a person, as a human, as an adult? What do I want? Just those questions, yeah. There's so many people that don't know, because our culture doesn't support that. We don't have that inner inquiry, or even just that feeling of my own autonomy, of that I know best for me. And that's one of the things that Emily and I are so passionate about, is this helping reconnect mothers with their own authority, with their own knowing, because it's something that we're not really taught is it important, or even given the opportunity to exercise or learn how to do.
Yeah, and that's where the village part comes in. Are you a midwife, Michelle?
No, I'm a doula. Yeah.
You're a doula and postpartum care.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've interviewed a midwife before, and she talks about, when, mothers, they're giving birth and they're pregnant and they don't know and they're asking for advice. And she always says, like, I always turn it back to them. What do you want? How do you feel? On your birthing day, what music do you want to listen to? And I would imagine that as postpartum caretaker, that you do the same, like you put it back on them so that they can continue to feel empowered. And then you guys kind of coach them throughout as the child grows. How do we allow this child to unfold, to continue to have them to have agency over themselves?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge part of what we're passionate about in how we work. Yeah.
So in the 3 to 6 years, the soul quality is really just wonder.
It's wonder and being and imagination and connection and play. It is play.
Yeah.
Like play is I think it's every human's essential quality, and we get trained out of it, but it's instinctual. It's who we come into this world. We're ready to play, we're ready to engage, and we're ready to explore. And we see this with children because that's all they do.
Yeah.
That's all they do until we start to tell them they need to do other things.
Yeah. And
you can't just play.
We don't have to do that.
No, we don't.
Play forever.
You can play forever. In fact, it's better if we all just start playing.
Yeah. and that's not to say like we can play with purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how entrepreneurs build their businesses. Yeah. They're playing, they love what they're doing, and it fulfills a need. And, they can sustain themselves and play until they die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to bring one little point in on this, in that in order for us to have the space to play, is that we usually need to simplify. We need to
Mhm.
simplify our lives, and we need to simplify our environment, because we're so used to being productive and doing and having our lives so full from end to end. And that play that we're talking about is we're not talking about like baseball practice or gymnastics or things like that that have a lot of structure, but we're talking about the play of imagination and the freeness to be able to explore and observe and be in our bodies and engage and discover and learn. And that takes space, that takes some room, both in our environments. Like, if you have a floor full of toys, that also is more structured play, as opposed to a few things that can engage the imagination and room to move them around,
Mhm.
and I'm sure Emily has some things to say about that, but that simplicity to give space to be able to really play is so important.
Yeah, because play is about creativity and being that artist and sculptor of our environment in our life. And and that's what children naturally do. And so yeah, to simplify, it's so easy to just add more activities
Mhm.
to our children's lives and to our lives. But what we lose is that ability to go deep and concentrated in our creativity and play. And that's the essential piece. So they need that space and time to do that. Outdoors is ideal. It's just nature in itself is creative and expansive, and it's easy to tune into. But in our home environments, in our play environments, they don't need. I mean, every parent ends up needing this. Like, they see all the toys that don't get used, and they just create a lot of clutter. For young children, again, it's that less is more. The more options they have for toys, the more overwhelming it becomes, and it's harder to go deep into their play. So we always encourage people to just keep it really simple. Just have a few favorite things, have things that are open-ended, just that basket of rocks and pine cones and some
Yeah,
bowls and the play kitchen. And,
yeah,
all they do, young children in their play at this time, they're recreating what they see, they're imitating. So oftentimes their play revolves around home life. They're cooking in the kitchen.
yeah.
They're setting up house. And it's very, we don't need much for that. Yeah, we don't need much for that. But yeah, simplifying our rhythms, simplifying our doings, allowing that time to just deepen into what we are doing and what we are feeling, and not to rush that and just create busyness. Yeah. Another piece for me that comes in at this age that we haven't touched on, that I think is really essential, because quite often, this is 3 to 6, the majority of families are choosing to send their children to preschool or kindergarten, um, or they're engaged in something that creates social interaction. And so the perhaps the very first time, we're developing and experiencing social conflict, and we're meeting the other. And that really kind of, yeah, this realm is a very social realm, and yet not, because we're not fully skilled in those connections. We just became an I.
Right.
And the world should really happen the way I want and feel it should happen. And if I like that toy, it should be mine. Yeah. We haven't developed any skill for empathy or sympathy. And that I think that's an important thing to, because as parents, we often want to develop those qualities in our children. And again,
Like
this
immediately.
time period is
Yeah.
not the time period for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
But we can model it, and we can show them how to do that, but we can't expect them to do that.
Right.
yeah. And we can't judge them for not doing it, or the other child. So oftentimes this is a period where, like, if they do go to school, they come home with all sorts of horrible stories of the things other kids did to them
Yeah.
and how sad they are about it, or how upset they were about it. And and it's easy as a parent to, like, just mama bear that and be like, oh, no way, this can't be happening. I'm talking to that teacher, and
Yeah.
what, that kid's bad, and just hold on a second.
Yeah.
Because one, your child is sharing their emotional perception of an event that also has other perceptions from the people who witnessed it and the other people involved in it. It is their story, and not to negate how they're feeling in any sort of way. Their feelings are always valid, but also it might not have been as dire and horrible as it felt to them.
To a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Or 5-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
So being mindful of the language around that.
Be mindful and be gentle and listen to your children. Listen to what they're expressing, and know that those dynamics, like what happens in a classroom, is really about social education and learning how to be in space with another being. And there's always these points of tension and meeting up against the other who has a different desire than you, and whose desire gets to come forward. And it's the very beginning of learning how to relate. And so again, we can't have these expectations of our adult life, where we honestly still struggle with that generally, and to expect these 3 to 6-year-olds to be skilled in expressing ourselves and our desires and having sympathy and empathy for the other and trying to, like, come to some wonderful solution. This is their practice realm, and it's unskilled. Let's just be clear about that. It's unskilled. They push because they are reactionary beings still. They live in the moment, and they live in their emotional expression, and there's no right or wrong to that for them. It's just what is. And so we as parents and educators get to be those places again, to hold space for that process of unfolding, and to slow down and be in it with them and just acknowledge it, like, oh, you want that toy, and Billy wants that toy. You both want that toy. I wonder, what could we do? And see if they come up with answers themselves. And if not, holding on to that toy and be like, oh, this toy doesn't really want to be pulled on right now. I'll hold it for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what else you could find to do. Yeah.
And because things going back to the beginning, things are so alive for them that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense that this toy doesn't want to be pulled on. So, okay,
fair enough.
I like it. Yeah, that's good to know, because people tend to get really nervous when kids don't share.
Yeah. Don't share. They don't behave the way we think they should behave. That's
And
not
there is
nice.
no should.
Yeah, there is no
Right?
should. And to be careful about those phrases of, like, that's not nice, that's not good.
Mhm.
Oh, right.
Mhm.
right? If somebody hits somebody and you say like, that's not nice.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean, this can be a whole other subject, and it's actually a workshop I've done for teachers before. It's, you know, holding off judgment on what happened is really important. And again, to put it back on the child, like, oh, I could see they didn't like that. Like,
You're
let's check.
describing the
Yeah,
emotion, but
you're
you're not
or
putting a
or
judgment.
not even the emotion, but just what happened of like, oh, you hit them, now they're sad, or they didn't like that. Even, I mean, I do it even with touches that they do like, of just like, let's ask if they want that hug.
Yeah.
Do you want that hug? Oh, you do? Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Oh, you don't? They don't want that hug. They don't want that hug right now. I bet you could find somebody else who wants a hug. Kind of like you're playing in this realm of like, how do I ask? How do I share space? And I have my desires, which for this age group, they're intense. They're like, why would I need to think of anything else but my desires? So they want to act them out. And then we're helping them come in to learn, like, not everyone has that same desire. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that is, it's a whole thing, but just to bring some gentleness and awareness there too, of like, these skills are just in their budding form. There is so much to learn here, and they're gonna make mistakes, and that's actually how they learn.
Yeah.
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 And give them room to make the mistakes. Give them some room to make the mistakes. Yeah.
Because
And
that's how
take
we learn.
and take care where there's harm, and mend where there's harm. When a child hurts another child, I have them help take care of that child. And I don't say they're mean or they're bad. It's just simple, like, oh, they're really sad right now. You can come help me get the healing box.
Mhm.
And we'll take it to them, and we'll take
And this is the answer, really, when parents say, well, I can't just let my child hit. Right? What am I supposed to do if I'm not supposed to, tell them that they're bad, or, like, teach them something that they can't hit? I can't just let them hit on the playground. And what Emily said, that example is exactly that. That's the thing that we want the parent to do. That's sort of the example of how to respond in those moments when your child is hitting, that we're taking the child along to check on the child that's been hurt, to develop that empathy, to develop that sympathy, to learn that, and it will take a long time, but that, there's something that I did, and it can only work in the moment. It can only work in the moment. It can't work later. But in that moment, that it's like, like, because they don't know, it's such a reaction from them, and they don't think, I'm going to do this thing to this other person. So we want to just gently make them aware and develop that empathy of like, when I did that, it was hurtful to someone else. But we're not shaming them or making them feel bad that they did it. It's just a very
Because it's not premeditated. They don't know.
Right.
And they're actually just learning where their energy ends and somebody else's begins.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So having them make those healing gestures without it being a big deal, and then also using phrases like, "Oh, our hands are going to do work."
Yeah. Our hands are for working.
Our hands are for working, or our hands like to be soft and gentle, and then to give them a gentle touch, or have them give you a gentle touch. Like, our hands do best when they're gentle.
And this comes back, loops back to the imitation and modeling.
Yeah.
Because that's how they learn.
That is how they
learn. We show them. They watch us.
Yeah. So I feel like there's so much, and we've gone all over the place. And there's still so much we could share, because this age in particular is just where we live, and when we love it. But one, I think, to just one more thing to touch on, because there are some important stages that happen.
Yeah.
And that's towards 5 and 6. There is a big transition as they get ready to move out of this garden of childhood into the next realm and stage of development. We have something that, you know, we in the Waldorf schools call the 6-year change. And all of this that we're sharing of this importance of imitation and letting them be, yeah, and knowing how little they are, that applies through all of this, because we can easily sometimes forget that we are the authority, and that even though they seem big and they have these really big emotions and reactions to things, we're the anchor. We're the emotional set point. We're the authority, and part of that is having really clear boundaries, and that really will serve children when, you know, they will push to find the boundaries, but once they know they are there and repetitively there, they relax into it, and oh my gosh, it's so secure for them. Like, that's what they're seeking. And towards the end of this age of 5 to 6, they get very mischievous. They start lying and they start doing all sorts of devious behavior that is absolutely age appropriate. But they are going to push your boundaries like they never did before.
And they will have before, but
They
this
will
be a whole new
this
level.
is a whole new level of boundary pushing and being sneaky little devils.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's an important piece that, like, it's an easy time for parents to start freaking out, like, what is happening here? And
Why is my child lying?
Why are they lying? They get very emotional. Everything's a big deal, big explosion. So, like, you know, we saw tantrums when they were younger, and like, this is the next level of a tantrum, and it's much more emotional. The emotions are just all over the place. Everything's so big, like these small little slights, and it happens in the social realm a lot because they're moving more into this social realm in a way they hadn't before. And so everything just, you know, they get angry, they get sad. It's like another little puberty. Like, it's like, here's your first puberty. That's what's happening.
Everything is so dramatic.
Dramatic.
I just throw myself on the floor. It's just, my life is ending. And yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Oh. And they need challenges. They need challenges at this age. Challenge really suits them, and work, really purposeful, meaningful work. And chores can always be done, even like starting at 3. Yeah, like chores, wonderful. Here's where they start to really need it. And they need to have this purposeful, meaningful contribution. And because they're starting to come into themselves in a new way. And again, not skillful, but challenge can really, really help them. And to have that, like, now there is something to push against that isn't my parent or my friend. It's like, I have this challenge. Like, so in play, this is when I like, especially with sneakiness comes in. They start to get a little nasty in their play in the social realm, doing things to actively bug somebody else is what happens. And it can be so exhausting and trying. And, you know, so then, like, again, using that imagination, because they're still there, they haven't moved out of that. How can I bring in an imagination around this that gives them a direction towards it? Like, where can I focus this? So what I like to do in the classroom is I always work with ninja school at this age, like, oh, it's time for ninja school. Because ninjas are sneaky and they're skillful, and there's challenges. And so like I would develop this whole level of challenges for them, that they had to be super quiet, or like not make a sound, like all of these things. So like, okay, now I need you to sneak over here to get this thing without a sound and bring it back to me. So like I'm totally playing in this realm of creativity and imagination, but it's meeting them exactly with what they will bring out in really horrible, uncomfortable ways, unless I focus it for them. So yeah, so that there is a wonderful book. What is it called? It's all about this, and it's used in Waldorf schools a lot. I'll have to look back and get back to you.
You'll have to get back. So we have to leave it in the notes, because
Yeah,
that becomes
yeah.
really important.
It's called You're Not the Boss of Me. That's what it's called. You're not the boss of me, because this is when they are starting to try to take their own authority. It begins here. Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah. You're not the boss of me. You'll hear them say that.
Yeah.
Oh, all the time.
They want, yeah. They want to start making their own choices. And so then again, as parents, like we start looking at where can we build those possibilities in, so that they're not disruptive. Because there is something absolutely natural and developmentally appropriate for that. So that's again, like taking up responsibilities and challenges, having them do the heavy work in the house, carry these heavy grocery bags, move this thing, take care of this. Now, they get to be a part in a new level, and to bring this celebration of it, of like, oh, you get to really help participate in the family. And there's still enough interest for it to grab them there, because later on, and we'll get to those stages, they don't want to do anything at a certain point, especially if they've been asked to do it. Yeah. But they still live in this realm where there's still that remnants of wanting to help and do more, which we didn't really say about 3 to 6, but that really happens in this age of like, they want to take on the task. They want to help wash the dishes. They want to help sweep. They want to do the things they see us doing.
Yeah, because they see us modeling, and they want to participate. It's that connectedness that they're seeking.
They want to feel part of the whole, of the system, of the family system. What is my place? Like, what is my purpose here? How can I contribute and feel valued in our ecosystem?
Yeah. And this 5 to 6 year changed into 7, like the pond is too small, and they feel it. And they feel the pinch, and it's time to move out of this garden of childhood, but they're in this awkward in between. Sometimes I'm still young, sometimes I'm not. And you see it in their bodies. They're gangly and just like weird, and and they feel it. And like, so this is this threshold that they're crossing. And it really is a threshold. So just being aware and mindful of that, and that the sneakiness, the lying, the needling, it's not, again, it's not forever, and it's not really out of ill intent. It's them awkwardly finding their way, and seeing that what they do does affect others, and that there's some power in that. There's some power. Oh, I can really get a reaction from someone now, and like they're tuning into it,
especially the parent.
And so they're feeling that power that happens from that. And now we as parents can help navigate how they use that power. And
This is
again,
really-
Mhm.
I was just gonna say this is really interesting because you're talking about this power, and they're recognizing that when they do that, they have the power to get a reaction from the parent. Meanwhile, the parent's reaction is a power over sort of reaction.
Mhm.
And in doing that, being the power over person, I've actually just given away my power because I allowed that child to get a rise out of me.
Mhm.
Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens is sometimes as parents we will one response is the power over, and the other one is that we then we join our children in that emotional realm, and we go on that emotional ride with them, and we sympathize with them so much that now the parent and the child are in it together, as opposed to the parent holding that inner anchor that allows the child to just be in the expression of it, and we again are holding a container for them to have a process of an emotion, as opposed to joining them in it, which can
Mhm.
be difficult for both the parent and the child, and really is the thing that is one of the things that can help keep us from holding that boundary for them,
Yeah.
which is what feels so safe and secure to them in the world, is when we can hold that and be the leader and be that authority, that
Right.
firm.
Because if you join them, then where is that anchor?
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's no
Right.
anchor. Now everybody's floating randomly.
Floating around.
Yeah.
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 Does that book talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the book talks a lot of different things, and then it really brings in the more anthroposophical understanding of what is happening in their process of incarnation at that point.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a
That's great.
balance of both, of just being practical and like, yeah, just seeing like, okay, it's all there. This is what we can expect. This is what we can prepare for, and it's normal. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that piece in because I do recall that time period, and I think it will allay a lot of fear that parents might have because they're not familiar that this is something that's normal and natural,
Yeah.
and not to jump into, oh my gosh, now they're going to be a liar and they're sneaky and all these bad things,
Yeah.
right? Again, putting a term onto a judgment onto a behavior. And we don't have to
Mhm.
do that because it's a natural part of development. We can just be joyful that it's happening and figure
Yeah.
out ways to incorporate it all.
And to set our boundaries around it. It doesn't mean that we're like, yeah, be a liar. Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. We're so proud of you. Um, but it's our ability then to reflect back to them of like, I don't like that. I don't like that. I like, it makes it hard for me to trust you. And I want to be able to trust you. And,
Yeah, because starting at that 5-year-old, like 6-year-old age, we can now have conversations that are a little more direct in this way than we could when they were really like 3, 4, So there's that point somewhere in the 5-year, like usually later half of 5, that
yeah,
you
5
can,
and a half. Yeah.
yeah, that you can really begin to have these direct conversations of things like what Emily said. I don't really like that.
Yeah.
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 It's just stating a fact.
Yep. I don't like it when you do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is my preference, or, I can see like that. I can see how that would feel fun to you, but it's not fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you get to really start openly, verbally sharing things like that. And you're holding your boundaries too. It's not like, sure, lie all over the place. Great. It'll be, but you understand it. And like, and you're working with, okay, well, where's the natural consequences? Where's the consequences that I feel like I need to hold in the workings of this family
Right.
dynamic? You can look at those things, but to look at them with that understanding that nothing is truly wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 And
Mhm.
they might not like it.
Oh yeah, they won't.
They're not going to like that you're holding a boundary. We're saying this all in a very peaceful way. And, you know, because if we hold that peaceful part within us, then that is easier for us to hold the boundary. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be peaceful for them.
Right.
It means, they're not going to like it. And there is this often response that we have as parents, that it's like, oh, my child is now, they're upset or they're crying, and now I've harmed them somehow, right? Or now I'm creating trauma. And that is actually not the case. That is not what is happening. Those boundaries are held out of love and care for the child. So they don't like it. But what we often see on the other side of their dislike is a relaxed child, is a peaceful child, is a happy child, as opposed to a child that doesn't get boundaries, and they're constantly building up that angst and that stress within them because they don't know. They don't know where they are in the world. They don't know what's right and what's wrong, or what feels good, or how people, like, how I should be in this situation. So, and they're looking for that. They're looking for the boundary.
Looking for the edges of the container.
Yeah.
They're looking for it.
Yeah.
And they want the container to be bigger. And so then you find out, where can it be bigger?
Yeah.
But you still hold, and you give them permission to feel what they're feeling and still have a boundary there to be like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yep, you're frustrated. I get it. Yeah. And
And
then
it's
as a
okay to
parent,
feel upset.
yeah, and and then this is the realm too, where you can then also give that feedback of like, yeah, I feel much the same when you do this.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for me too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that was such,
Mhm.
what you said about the container, and I just want to bring that up, because when we widen that lens again to early childhood, and how absolutely tiny the container is when they first arrive, what we talked about in our first video, and the container is the just immediate family within in the bed. We're not even talking about the bedroom. Like, it all begins just in this tiny little place. And as they develop, we as parents are watching and observing and noticing when it's appropriate and when it's time to expand that container a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, until they finally,
Till they're 35.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good image, analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Boundaries are very important. It really creates security in the child.
They really do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's okay for them to feel upset and for them to express, and us not to get mad. It's a boundary and it's a fact, and it's
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And sometimes we will get mad, and that is
Mhm.
also okay.
Mhm.
It's just, can we create the repair, and can we have that be a moment where, because we're so afraid of anger in this culture, and like having those big emotions. So sometimes the reality is that we as a parent are going to lose it. There will be moments,
Yes.
and that's just the reality. As like, no matter what you do and how much you prepare and how much rhythm you've got, there are just going to be days, because we're human,
Yeah.
and it's not going to work out, and we're going to lose it. And those are also moments, it's like, oh, we can have that moment with, generally with our older children, but whenever, and be like, wow, I had a moment of frustration,
We're
and
human.
yeah, and I forgiveness, and
Mhm.
I'm sorry that I yelled at you, and I'll try to do better next time. And that is also modeling.
Yeah,
That is also imitation. How
100%.
can you, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
being real in the world, and this is how I am, and this is how I want to repair it, and this is how I develop relationship.
And we don't want to put that sense of perfectionism on our children. We don't want it for ourselves. It's not, that is a heavy, heavy weight to bear.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful for our children to see our striving and where we fail and or don't do as well as we had hoped. And that's good for them too, and it gives them permission to do the same. But
Right.
if we try to hide that from our children, they don't get that example, and then they feel that pressure, like they too have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And they can't let people see them fail or struggle.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, that creates all sorts of other emotional burden. And
Right.
yeah,
This is
what
really, oh, sorry.
oh, I was just going to say, this in particular, this threshold, this transition is just a great opportunity to acknowledge humanness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say that it's often sometimes a misconception of of what people think, like early childhood, when we're talking about all of this beauty and wonder, and that is 1,000% true. And it can set up the parent for thinking that they always have to live in that realm, and like if they fall into humanness, that they're now doing a disservice to their child, because we're not living in this dreamy, like perfect world, and
Sweetness.
now I'm like failing them.
Yeah.
But we have to show the full range of the human experience.
And that sweetness, that dreaminess, that it doesn't exclude those messy pieces of life. Like if we look at nature, there's death, there's chaos. Like and for young children, those aren't things to be avoided, and they don't cause fear for them. They're natural. It is our own projection around them that creates that story for them. But the reality is, like, yes, this dreamy little heaven on earth, and heaven on earth is also full of shortcomings and conflict, and just, it's where we develop our preferences and desires. And sometimes we need to meet those shadows in order to do that,
Oh, yeah.
to have that. Like, it's actually essential. And so that oneness is really non-duality.
Yes. Right.
That's what it
Right.
is.
That is the oneness. The duality is the oneness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in all of this, we are never, ever putting the pressure on the parent to be perfect, or not have an intense emotion, or be angry or frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's an important piece of the learning process for the children in their development as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life is life.
Life is life.
Yeah.
We're not trying to create a utopia.
No.
Right. We're trying to create a sense of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And
natural
duality.
unfolding through development.
Yeah.
And all the human emotions are part of that.
Yeah. And the reality is, like, that's not even something we have to create. It just is.
It just is.
We just have to tune in and allow it, not get in the way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that was a really, really big discussion around 3 to 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, did you guys have anything else to add?
No.
No.
Feel good about what we covered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
touched
A
on
lot
all
of good nuggets in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I will talk to you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.